As things stand, Real Madrid are going through somewhat of an unconvincing start to proceedings in Spain and in Europe. Currently, Real Madrid are in second place in the league standings and trail the league leaders, Real Sociedad, by a single point with a game in hand. In the Champions League, however, Real Madrid are not having a great time and barely managed to hold on to a 3-2 win over Inter Milan at home. This was Los Blancos' first victory in the group stages of the competition this season, after they were held to a draw by Borussia Mönchengladbach and lost rather surprisingly to Shakhtar Donetsk. Zinedine Zidane's side aren't necessarily firing on all cylinders, and indeed they weren't really the greatest Real Madrid side to win the league title. While most would argue this statement, the fact is Real Madrid managed to win the league title only because Barcelona's form worsened with each passing week. Had La Blaugrana been at least a little bit more consistent, they would have easily won the title. One of the reasons why we've not discussed Madrid's problems is that Barcelona are the ones who are really going through a tough period. The Catalans are no longer the all-conquering giants that they used to be, and their performances, apart from that one game against Juventus where they were pure class, have not been up to the mark. Madrid beat Barcelona in the first Clásico of the season in a very convincing fashion, but that win is very much masking the issues this team has. They're conceding goals, don't have a great defensive record any longer, and even up front have serious issues that need to be sorted out. Eden Hazard has never managed to keep himself fully fit, and the Belgians' good performances have been more of a case of a false dawn than anything else. Karim Benzema was their most consistent performer last season. The Frenchman took the burden of scoring goals upon himself and delivered whenever needed. Meanwhile, Luka Jovic, a player who arrived at the Santiago Bernabeu with a reputation of one of the best strikers in Germany, struggled for form and fitness. Vinicius Jr. is a very young player, and no one should expect the Brazilian to come with the goods all the time. However, the youngster proved to be Zidane's X-factor in the starting 11, and even today he's the one who looks the more likely player to create chances. That was Hazard's job, but the former Chelsea man is slowly becoming an unreliable player due to the amount of time he spent on the treatment table. Zidane was Carlo Ancelotti's assistant when the Italian guided Los Blancos to a long-awaited Decima, their 10th Champions League title. Following Ancelotti's sacking, the Frenchman was promoted as the team's manager. No one expected Zidane to guide his team back to their glory days, but the former playmaker ended up delivering 3 Champions League titles. But behind all those victories, something else was brewing up. The legendary France international was not happy with club president Florentino Perez. Eventually, the former World Cup winner resigned as Real Madrid manager. According to reports, Zizou resigned because the club broke a promise to sell Wales international Gareth Bale. The speedy forward always divided opinion in the Spanish capital due to his reserved nature and love for playing golf during his off days. Even though he played a big role in guiding the club to one of its most illustrious eras, the former Tottenham man never commanded the confidence of his manager. Last season, Bale lost his place in the starting 11 and rarely featured the last time Madrid won the Champions League final at the expense of Liverpool. During that game, the Welshman had to contend with a place on the bench and came on in the second half where he scored twice, and yes, how can we forget that stunning overhead kick? Reportedly, Bale could have been sold in the summer had he not scored a brace against Jurgen Klopp's men. In fact, Zidane could have been the club's manager had Bale been sold. Zidane had asked Perez to sell Bale and the club president decided to comply. The Frenchman wasn't a huge fan of the Welshman, whom he deemed too individualistic for his liking. Moreover, the manager was also concerned about Bale's injury record. Perez reportedly agreed to sell Bale and wanted to use the money to sign Neymar from Paris Saint-Germain. However, Zidane wasn't a big fan of that either. He wanted the team to prioritise the signing of Eden Hazard, whom he felt would be the best candidate to finally replace Cristiano Ronaldo. But once it became clear that Perez had gone back on his word, Zidane tendered his resignation. Almost a year and 2 managers later, Zidane returned, perhaps on the same wavelength as his president. It was water under the bridge, and during last year's summer transfer window, Perez more than made it up to his manager by spending big on the likes of Hazard, Ferland Mendy and Luka Jovic. Clearly, Madrid meant business, and those signings were a great sign for Zidane, who now had all the support of his management. Even though he'd arrived, it started becoming very clear that most of Zidane's transfer wishes weren't too successful. While Eden Hazard arrived unfit and carried a bit of extra fat, Luka Jovic had forgotten how to score. Eder Militao did fairly well, but given his age, was never expected to usurp veteran defender Sergio Ramos. But despite their struggles and glaring issues at the back, Real Madrid were able to take advantage of Barcelona's failings and eventually won the league title. It wasn't pretty, but no one is going to remember the finer details. However, even then, Madrid did not look like a title-winning side, and their title defence this season hasn't been without any problems either. This is why there are lingering question marks over Zidane's credentials and ability to usher the club successfully out of this transitionary phase they find themselves in. After a surprise defeat to Shakhtar, rumours started flowing that Zidane's future is in doubt and that the game against Barcelona would play a big role in where he ends up in the coming weeks. However, a 3-1 win over Lionel Messi's side put the rumours to bed. But the manner in which Madrid are playing seems to suggest that this team is still struggling and that they do really end up lacking in ideas when it comes to closing off games. The most recent example of this can be taken from the 3-2 win over Inter. Madrid defence was at 6s and 7s, even though they didn't have to contend with the physical presence of Romelu Lukaku. It took a Rodrigo strike right at the end of proceedings to earn Madrid their first win in Europe this season. That just goes on to show how unconvincing they've been even in games that they've won. At the end of the day, the blame of a team's poor performances falls on the manager, even though there's a limit to what a manager can do when the game starts. As a player, Zidane was out of this world. He oozed class and won so much. As a manager, he's won the Champions League on multiple occasions, but has never really won over the neutrals. A few have even gone so far as to suggest that the Frenchman was lucky to have won so much as a manager. So what happens now? Following shocking defeats at the hands of Shakhtar and the newly promoted Cadiz, Madrid remain unconvincing title holders. The likes of Real Sociedad and Atletico Madrid have set the pace for the current campaign, and if Madrid continue to stumble the way they have so far, it'll become really hard for Perez to continue throwing his support behind a manager who still has a lot left to prove. One can hope that Madrid will turn a corner and start putting in displays that are befitting of a reigning champion. But in case things don't work out, Florentino Perez will have some serious decisions to make. As an iconic former player and then guiding Madrid to new heights of continental success, Zidane still has enough credit left to buy himself one more time. However, in the world of football, it's mostly always the case of now rather than then. Eventually, Zidane's performances will be dictated by what he achieves in the next coming weeks rather than what he's already achieved. Madrid's hierarchy would also be willing to play the waiting game, but they might start getting more impatient if the team continues to underperform. Moreover, there are already a couple of managers out there who would love to get the job. Massimiliano Allegri has been sitting out, waiting for the right opportunity for a long time, and after working wonders with Juventus, would prove himself to be an ideal candidate. The Italian tactician is as astute as they come, and his teams are always set up to become hard to score against, a problem Madrid are dealing with right now. Mauricio Pochettino is another manager who's been patiently waiting for the right opportunity. The Argentine tactician has been hotly linked with the job at Old Trafford should Ed Woodward decide to dispense of the services of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, but the allure of managing Real Madrid could prove to be too hard to turn down. Based on how things have transpired in the league and in Europe, you can't say for sure that Real Madrid will be defending their title easily or go further in the Champions League. But Zidane, on the other hand, will remain under pressure as long as the team doesn't start playing with the sort of swagger that's been attributed to the Madrid sides of yesteryear. The Frenchman will have options, however, if he decides to leave or is relieved of his duties. The iconic Frenchman is definitely the type of manager you'd want to manage a squad that has big egos. At present, Juventus are also having a more torrid time under Andrea Pirlo. The Italians are also underperforming and, dare we say, have a much better squad on paper than Real Madrid. So if Paratici or Agnelli decide to fire their former player, a move for Zidane could be on the cards, given the fact that they did reportedly approach him before they made their move for Pirlo. The coming weeks are going to be very interesting and perhaps of great concern to Zidane. While he's done a great job at the club, the job isn't over and he still has a long way to go before finally earning the reputation of being one of the most tactically proficient managers out there.